Today I'm playing a tournament at a course in Lynchburg, Virginia that's going to be used for Worlds next year. So I kind of trying to iron out what the layout is going to actually end up being, and I think what I've heard is it's pretty close to what Worlds is going to be. What's really interesting about this course is that it's slightly harder than New London, at least scored a par. But I think they do a good job of making you not feel like you're on a golf course very much. Currently I'm tied 17th going into the round. Real quick before we get into hole 1 with my little microphone set up here. They take the last like 3 days off to just kind of chill, just like a long weekend. So I know I don't normally do that, and I'm not planning on doing it a ton more. Gonna probably be doing daily, if not close to daily, throughout the rest of this year going into 2024. But yeah, thanks for sticking with me. And sorry it's been a few days, but first we got this golf course to play, which I like a decent bit. Hold on, really beautiful shot. So we get started here on a beautiful fall day. This is a 703-foot par 4. You're going to see OB painted along a lot of this course, and unfortunately it was kind of hard to see unless you got a practice round in. Luckily I was able to, which is already on the channel, and so for hole 1 I'm deciding to just throw my strike right down the middle. You can see the OB on the right side, there's OB short, that car path to the left is OB, which is why I decided to throw that neutral 7-speed because I knew it wouldn't get too much right to left movement. End up throwing almost a perfect shot, and I have probably about 260, maybe a little bit less in. I am throwing a Firebird though because it's a slight low ceiling. This OB creeps up in close to the basket, probably about 45 feet on either side of it, and I end up throwing a really good shot with my Firebird to give myself a look, actually not a look, a tap in for the first birdie of the day. Hole 2 we're about to see coming up. Big shout out to Luke Callahan, the disc golf kid who I was lucky enough to play around with. We're good buddies who met over at KC Wide Open, so I was stoked to be able to play with him. Hole 2 is a 330 foot, it says, probably plays closer to 390, and I thought we had it ranged to around 390. Don't quite know, it probably plays about 400 feet because I'm throwing my interval on a hyzer to get there. Just have a nice little straddle putt to try to go 2 for 2, throwing the disc pretty well, and I'm putting myself inside the circle and giving myself looks, which is basically all you can ask for at these harder style courses. Unfortunately, I just caged that. I've noticed that I'm not really spinning my putts. It rolls back to just between that tree. Big shout out to my caddy, Forrest, for filming for me. He did end up catching that shot, but I was able to make that putt, so we have a birdie par start. Moving on to hole number 3, another really beautiful par 4, and this is why I say like it's not quite a golf course feeling, which is going to be really nice for spectating because you have this initial gap to get off, and then there's going to be a pretty tricky green that'll start to feel a little bit more like a golf course. But this is a 740 foot par 4. I'm throwing down that right gap because I knew if I throw a stable destroyer flat to slight anhyzer, no chance it goes OB right, and I left myself a little longer than I might like. I'm 330 out, and so I'm deciding to throw a disc that I've been throwing really well this whole entire week, including my practice rounds, which is my black and green Prism Plasma Envy, one of my old shattered van runs. I end up throwing it basically dead at the basket, or aiming slightly right of it because I knew it will get some fade at the end, and end up hitting it absolutely, which is perfect because right behind me is that hazard bunker, which is in play about 10 feet away from the basket. So birdie par birdie, let's try to keep it rolling. If you haven't noticed already, these first 3 holes and then now this 4th hole have pretty tight greens. This hole is a 331 foot downhill par 3. There is a drop zone if you do go OB, and so I'm deciding to just throw a low beamer with that same Envy. I thought it might have pushed it almost out of bounds, and luckily it sits just before it. So I have another circle 1 putt, 4 for 4 inside the circle. Unfortunately, 2 for 4 on cage in those putts. Just really got to get that over, and I noticed that both on this putt and on the putt on hole 2, there's OB within about 10 feet behind the basket, and so I was a little more nervous that I needed to be on those putts, especially because I haven't really been missing left or right this week, so I need to just have the confidence to kind of jam it down the middle. Hole 5 is a really fun hole, a very difficult par 4, 762 feet, all the way up that hill. I'm trying to throw to that plateau that you're able to see right in the middle high of the screen with my interval, and I throw a really good shot out of the hand, but unfortunately I wasn't thinking about those branches, and I end up clipping those, moving left, but luckily there is a drop zone. This is one of the things I really liked about this course is everything seemed to be relatively decently planned out. I know that like these flags, drop zones maybe aren't the prettiest, but it's really nice that if I don't have to re-tee 1, and 2, that it gives me a shot that I can get up and down for the bogey. There's almost no chance that I'm able to get up and down for par because this is still probably about 550 feet going straight uphill, and so I'm throwing my Pathfinder, just trying to get it short of that tree that it's kind of going towards, because that tree is OB, the right side is OB, the car path left is OB, and now we're looking at a gap that we can try to hit. If I was a little bit more right, it would feel significantly more comfortable. And there is OB right, but if you go over it, you're able to get close to the basket with a little spike hyzer. So I'm eyeing up this little flex forehand, and I decide to move the bag because I don't really like my angle. I'd probably have to burn it over a little too much. There is a low ceiling, and I'd rather just kind of go over the top of these trees. This is not really a shot that I'm very good at right now. These spike hyzers, it's something that I definitely have to get better at, especially as my nose angle gets better, because throwing nose up spike hyzers tends to just not work out super well. Luckily, I got a little bit of backspin, a little pro golfer move there, and I'm able to save the single bogey. Still haven't taken a double this whole tournament, and I do not want to start today. Hole 6 is another one of these kind of postage stamp greens, but it's kind of thin green that's running down the hill, along the hill, so it's kind of hard to have some speed control. I'm deciding between an envy and that zone that I tossed to the side, and I decided to go with that same envy just because I'd been throwing it so well, and instead of continuing to throw it well, I pulled it a little bit right, which never got back in bounds. It was just pin high, but never had a chance, and so I have to pitch up and hopefully take a bogey. I definitely should have thrown a zone, but sometimes I wanted to go with the disc that was like working for me that week instead of the right disc, and sometimes you just kind of have to buck up and like throw the right shot. I don't know, it's kind of hard to balance whether you need to throw the right shot or the disc that you're jiving with. I'm not 100% sure what the right answer is always, obviously, but hole 7 is a 403 foot par 3 out this beautiful gap over the water, perfectly framed up. I'm going to go with my C-line CD1. I had thrown it very well in practice and put it to about 10 feet before I missed that putt, if you saw that. I ended up pulling this one a little bit because the wind was a decent bit more, as you can see in the background, compared to when I had my practice round, and I kept it over, gave myself a look for the putt, but unfortunately I'm just not capitalizing on these circle 1 birdie putts. I've had 2 OBs, which have correlated to 2 bogeys, and I've been inside the circle for everything else, so a good putter would be 3 down right now, but I'm trying to not have that be in my head. I'm just trying to take the next shot as it comes as we move into hole 8, a 671 foot par 4. I throw a turnover that I definitely needed to get higher so it would flex out and get closer, because the second shot is a beast. It is uphill a little bit over 400 feet away, and where you see those couple trees framing up the basket, that is OB. Just past it about 30 feet is safe. And so I was debating trying to go for it or maybe give myself a closer look, but I decided to just throw a forehand with a stable destroyer, just kind of trying to put it around this tree. Meant to flex it a little bit more, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. I just need to put myself past the OB line, which I did, pitch up a zone, and you can see I kind of fluffed it a little bit. Left it a little nose up, stalled out a little right. I'm pretty disappointed there because I thought I left it about 40 feet short and I was going to have a putt for the par. Luckily, I'm only about 10 or 12 feet. And I'm able to clean that up because it's for par. If it was for birdie, no chance it's going in, baby. Hole 9 is an 834 foot par 4. We're teeing off from here all the way out to the distance just before that back tree line. I'm going to be throwing my finish line interval and just remembering to put a little bit of flex on it because I know it can handle that. I put that little bit of flex and you're going to see Luke Callahan's dad. Do we call him, if it's the disc golf kid, is that the disc golf dad? I guess. We'll call him that. The disc golf dad thinks about getting out of the way, but luckily enough, my shot's just nose up enough, just stable enough disc that it is going to get back to the left, and I have 399 feet in. I did end up ranging it, and so I'm basically just marking it and about to throw a similar shot with that interval, but because it's pretty flat, I just want to throw this flat and wide. Don't want to give it too much turn because there is OB right. That's what you're going to see all over this course. It's not very well marked, and so when Worlds does come through, they're going to have to like help you visualize that because you'd be like, oh, you could just throw wherever, but there's OB left and right and like in some weird places all over this course, which makes it a significantly better course, but it makes it a lot harder to actually kind of spectate just even watching this footage back if you don't know where the OBs are, because it makes each of those shots a little bit more difficult. I have another birdie look from inside the circle about 30 feet. I'm trying to relax, remember to spin my wrist, and I just like popped the disc nose down. At this point, I'm getting seriously frustrated because I should be really decently under par through 9 holes. I had 2 OBs and everything else was inside the circle for birdie except for hole 8. So it moves us into hole 10 where you get to unleash a little bit. This is an 850 foot par 4. I'm deciding between that interval that I just threw and a Star Destroyer, which is a little bit of flip, which I threw really well in my practice round, you might have seen. I just seen Luke go out of bounds straight, and so I was like, okay, just make sure that you push this on some hyzer. No worries at all, and I end up ripping it on hyzer. Thought it was perfect out of the hand. It just continues to flip up and move to the right. Obviously, the downhill is going to make the disc flip a little bit more, and it is a slightly flippy disc, but you hear me have a little bit of surprise there because as we got down the hill, there was a little more of a left to right wind that you can even see on these flags. So I'm throwing 3, trying to get up and down for a par, and way out in the distance, I end up seeing a buck come out of the woods. Really cool. I don't know, maybe like an 8-point, 10-point buck for all you hunters out there. Really cool to just kind of see that. Take the distraction time because I have a 450-foot downhill shot that I have to throw my interval on. I decided to throw the interval because I wanted to just throw something that was one angle instead of trying to turn stuff because the OB is tight all around the basket, but you can't see it anywhere, so they're really going to have to put a lot of like advertising walls up or something. Just messing with Jonah there, trying to tap out. He was trying to go out of turn. I was going to give him some strokes for that. He decides to give me some props for that super good putt because he knows that I can't make putts unless they're for par, so he should have remembered that. Hole 11 is 327 feet. Down the hill, another postage stamp green. I'm throwing that hyzer with my zone, just trying to get it down there. Thought I juiced it a little bit because I did leave it slightly high, but it ended up being a pretty perfect shot, leaving me inside the circle again. And I told Luke, the disc golf kid, I was like, if I miss another birdie putt, you have to slap me in the face. And I missed another birdie putt. Some days you just like don't know what's happening with the putt. Like I'm throwing the disc so well.
Luke. No.
Oh. Do you want it backhand or?
Whatever you want to do. I deserve whatever. Thank you.
That was pretty nice of Luke, honestly. He should have probably rocked my... But he ended up not doing that, which I'm very grateful for because I'm able to throw this 491-foot downhill par 3 onto an island green. All like that fairway that you can see in the golf area is out of bounds, and we're throwing over that. End up throwing my honor, which was a pretty decent shot, leaving myself to 50 feet. Really just didn't want to put it OB. Anything in bounds I was pretty happy with because I knew it'd probably be par at worst. End up kind of overcorrecting. Instead of putting it low, I end up putting it over the basket, but it's all right because it's for par, so I'm able to make that. Hole 13 is kind of one of my favorite holes on the course. You see that line right out in that field? That's the OB line, so for all of you OB haters, there's something else to hate. And I guess as well for me, there's something else to hate because there was a pretty strong left to right wind, but I just been throwing my interval so well, and so I thought I made the mistake of throwing too flippy on hole 10, and then I ended up making the mistake of throwing too flippy again because really you just want to put this in balance. This is a pretty tough birdie because past that tree in the middle of your screen is the basket about another 100 feet, and there's 2 gaps that you need to choose. There's OB all up the left and right side, the wood line on the right side, after that big line that you can see on the right, and then there's OB left, maybe about 40 feet in front of that big tree that's past the green one. I decided to flex my stable kind of shattered van destroyer and ended up throwing it pretty perfect. You can't really see it very well, but it was a very good shot because there's OB about 10 feet behind it, and I threw it exactly to the 350-foot landing zone that I wanted to throw it to. Missed the upshot with my zone, but able to tap in for another single bogey, which I'm not too mad about, but I'm starting to get really frustrated in my round, and like there's a little bit of pent-up anxiety for hole 14, 850-foot par 4. End up just overcooking this one, just trying to correct with my drivers, and I get the most gracious kick in the world off of that tree. I need to like find that tree and kiss it and fertilize it forever because it puts me somehow in bounds. I have literally no idea how I stayed in bounds, but it put me past this rock, which means that I don't really have a run-up because I don't think I can move that rock even if I was allowed to. And so I'm just trying to decide like what standstill I want to take with my destroyer or my interval. I decided to disc down slightly to my interval. I don't want to go too flippy because there is OB right. I was very nervous that I turfed it onto that card path, which was OB. And it's going to put us onto probably the most gimmicky green that I may have ever played in a tournament. It is, I don't understand why this would be a green that would be considered for Worlds, to be completely honest with you. Like, I think this hole absolutely has to change because, like, I threw a pretty good shot that I wanted to throw, ends up being a really soft putter, like a beat-in zero medium putter from Latitude 64, and somehow was able to get up and down for that par. But, like, trying to take a birdie on that hole is, like, almost impossible because you have to spike it in there and hope it doesn't roll away, and there's OB about 45 feet past it and all the way along that right side. So that's a hole that's going to have to change. Hole 15, 755-foot par 4 is how we played it. It's almost impossible. It's at the top of that hill that golf cart is going up right now. I threw a shot that I thought was perfect with my Star Destroyer. Unfortunately, it's hit that hill that you see me on right now and skipped to the right OB. So I'm throwing 3 from that lie. Not a great lie. I would love to be just a little bit more left on top of that hill. This is probably where I'm going to pitch up to either way, though. I was really hoping that I could kind of move that little tee box marker because those have to also be out for Worlds. I'm kind of surprised that they were still in for this, but it doesn't seem like they'd be too difficult to kind of put in and out. I can't really move it, so I'm going to have to watch my run up there, and I'm deciding to throw, even though it's only about 200 feet straight up this hill, probably a mid-range, because I want to make sure that I give it the height and it kind of has the pushy glide instead of a putter, which could drop a little bit easier. This hole actually, though, even though we're playing it as a par 4, I alluded to that earlier, it is a par 5, and apparently it was just mislabeled for this tournament. So it just means that the course is going to be playing probably about a stroke easier, or maybe about the same, or maybe even slightly harder, but this hole will be playing a stroke easier because it's going to be a different par, as it should be a par 5. I don't think there are any birdies on the day on this hole. Of course, have a little bit of a tester putt, and I'm able to put it in because I don't want to take a double bogey. Really happy to get that one over the cage. It was a little bit like low nose up putt, but we ended up making that, moving us into hole 16, which is a 998-foot par 4, which I think is actually the right par that they want to play here. It is pretty downhill, and it is a completely left to right moving fairway. Of course, OB all along the right and left side. It does line up for a really big roller if you have one. I don't throw nose down enough to throw really good rollers, so I decided to just play this one for par. I put my interval kind of right in the middle. I have still 550 feet out, pretty downhill. Not a thing that I'm even going to think about going for with a roller, with the air shot, anything. So I'm just throwing a flat to hyzer shot with my interval instead of worrying about flexing it, especially because we did play this hole into a headwind. So I'm pretty sure that this hole also had 0 birdies. Let me just double check real quick, hole 16. But I end up throwing a pretty much perfect shot, almost leave my rangefinder behind. Oh my gosh, oh, that was round 3. Good. Okay, I was like, huh, there were 16 birdies. Okay, there was 1 birdie. Big shout out Caleb Hall for birdieing that hole. Hole 14 and hole 15, the 2 holes previous to this, didn't have a single birdie since they played as par 4s, both of them. Okay, we're rambling a little bit now, but I end up pitching up that zone. Sorry, I looked away from the screen for too long. End up putting that in, pretty much executing my game plan. I think that was one of the better scores on the hole. It's not an easy hole, but taking that par, I'm really happy with, moving us into hole 17, which is just a big forehand hyzer. There is a layup zone if you want to take it to try to get just a simple par. I thought I threw this perfect. Unfortunately, I shorted it a little bit because I ended up disking up because we had a headwind. I threw an honor really well in practice, and I definitely should have just tried to throw it around that tree. You missed the pitch up from the drop zone, and that is a drop-in single bogey. So at this point, I'm 3 over par. Would love to get a birdie on the last hole, but it's a 1,078-foot par 5. There's OB running all along the right and left side, and there's a river in the middle of it. So I'm trying to just pitch up to straight landing zone, and now we have a slight headwind, which could help to turn the disc. I'm kind of debating between a couple here. I have the interval in hand. I end up reaching for that Star Destroyer that's a little bit flippy, and I could go even flippier with my Echo Star Destroyer, but you're going to see kind of where that guy is walking in the background on that tee box. That's really the ultimate landing zone if you're able to get there. You probably need to throw a better drive off the tee to really do that, and that's why I threw this Star Destroyer on as much hyzer as I did. If the wind wanted to push it to the right and have it flip up, I could get up on that tee box, which would give me a better opportunity for the birdie, but this bailout zone to the left is pretty solid as well. I'm really hoping that this is my last big drive, but it's going to be a pretty uphill shot to get to the green. I think it probably plays 500 feet to get to the green from here, so I'm really just trying to flip up my Echo Star Destroyer. Thought I hit that tree. Luckily got just underneath it, which I'm really happy with, and it leaves me with this upshot to, well, I tried to putt it. I tried to make it, but uphill, 85 footers, not really what I'm looking for at the end of a 12,000 foot course. Decided to steal Luke's putter and tap out my 3 over par.
They don't miss. See? They don't miss. I've never missed a putt with those putters.
So I ended up shooting surprisingly like a 10-10 rated round. I didn't think it was that crazy while I was playing it, but honestly watching this footage back and like seeing myself play, I was like, this is a little bit soft ratings wise. Like I thought it rated very well. I felt like I probably shot around 1,000 rated round, which would be 2 strokes worse. Like I shot 3 over, 5 over was like 999 or something. And so I was very surprised to get my 10-10 rating. I think there's still some tweaking that needs to be done before the Pro Tour comes to town, because honestly, if I make my putts, I mean, this layout with that missed par, I think I'm 3 or 4 under, and I wasn't even throwing the disc phenomenally well. I was just mostly putting it where I wanted to, so they're going to need to up the difficulty, I think, slightly for Worlds. Don't exactly know where to do that. I'm not really massive course designer, and a lot of people probably aren't gonna like it, but it's just like bring in some OBs, make things a little more difficult. They got to change the green on that one hole. Not dealing with that. Like that's the most gimmicky green in the world. But yeah, so far over 1,000 rated for the tournament. Feeling really decent about my game going into one last round at New London, where I'm going to try to break par tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching this round. You go watch the New London first round video right here, or if you want to watch another video, boom, right there, watch it. Please do it. Subscribe if you want, and I won't leave you hanging for 3 more days again. But thanks for coming back and watching, even though I took that little break. Bye.